Something unusual is unfolding in China at the moment, challenging common economic understanding and leaving global experts in shock. Right at the heart of the country, the cities are silent, skyscrapers vacant, streets deserted. Yet, in the face of this stark reality, the Chinese government continues to declare that the economy is thriving at a steady 5% growth rate, as if nothing is wrong. How is this possible? And what's behind those numbers? This is the story of growth amid a looming crisis that could shake the global economy to its core. Let's find out more. For decades, China dazzled the world with its rapid rise to industrialization. Double-digit GDP growth was the norm from the early 2000s to mid-2010s. New airports, high-speed rail lines, and towering skylines sprang up almost overnight. But behind this glittering facade was a growth model that was dangerously reliant on one thing: construction, and lots of it. The Chinese Communist Party, under the leadership of President Xi Jinping, publicly committed itself to specific growth targets every year. This was an ambitious 5% GDP growth per year. But here's the catch: when a country promises such a level of growth, especially in an economy already the size of China's, it becomes harder and harder to achieve through natural means like consumer spending or even technological innovation. So, how did they hit those impossible targets? They build roads, bridges, apartment complexes, office towers, even when no one needs them. But this isn't just speculation, it's a well-documented economic strategy. China is said to consume more cement every 2 years than the total amount of cement used by the United States during the 20th century. According to the National Bureau of Statistics of China, the country's total road network expanded to over 4.6 million kilometers in 2023. What a distance! That's enough to circle the Earth more than 115 times, yet much of this network leads to places where very few people live. Then there are the infamous ghost cities scattered all around China, places like Kangbashi, a district in Ordos City, Inner Mongolia, who built to house over 1 million residents. Yet today, the population barely reaches 100,000, with most towering apartment blocks standing empty and shopping malls remaining without tenants. You might wonder, why build them? The answer lies in how China calculates its economic activity. Building a city, even if no one lives there, still adds to GDP. The materials purchased, the labour paid, the loans issued, all count as economic output, so whether anyone moves in is irrelevant from a statistical standpoint. This artificial growth model has led to shocking figures. By 2023, China has built over 65 million vacant apartments. That's enough apartments to house the entire populations of France and the United Kingdom combined. However, real estate developers like Evergrande and Country Garden, which were once seen as symbols of China's unstoppable rise, are now drowning in debt. Evergrande defaulted on over $300 billion in debt obligations back in 2021, which triggered waves of panic through the property sector. Despite this financial chaos, the government continues to push for more construction, because without it, the GDP growth figures simply don't add up. But why does this matter beyond numbers? Because this isn't just wasted money. These are resources, steel, cement, human labour, consumed to produce things society doesn't need. And all of it is funded by the already massive government debt, with local governments relying heavily on shadowy financing vehicles to keep the construction boom alive. The cracks in this model are now becoming impossible to ignore. Chinese youth unemployment hit a record high of 15.72% in the middle of 2023 before the government conveniently stopped publishing the data. And even these numbers disappeared from public view. The empty towers and deserted business parks stand as silent monuments to an economic model stretched to its breaking point. This leads to the unavoidable question. If China's future isn't built on real demand and consumer confidence, what will happen when this false growth finally collapses? Let's find out. Even as skyscrapers rise and highways stretch across barren lands, a much quieter force seems to be choking China's economy: its people's refusal to spend. In a country of over 1.4 billion people, you'd expect a thriving consumer market, but that's not the case. In fact, Chinese consumption accounts for just 39% of China's total GDP, compared to 68% in the United States and 56% on average globally. Why would the Chinese save so much, yet spend so little? Well, the answer dates back into its history. Only a handful of countries have experienced the kind of trauma that China has had to endure over the past century. From the Great Chinese Famine of 1959 to 1961, which killed an estimated 30 million people, to repeated cycles of economic instability, the fear of scarcity is deeply rooted in the national psyche. Older generations lived through unimaginable hardships and learned that survival meant saving everything for the unknown future. This mindset didn't just fade away with time, but was passed down to the next generation. Take a look at the one-child policy, which was introduced in 1979 and only phased out in 2015. This policy has created what's now known as the 4-2-1 family model, one working adult supporting 2 parents and 4 grandparents. In practical terms, this means a single child will be responsible for the financial and personal care of 6 elderly family members. Without a robust pension system or affordable elder care, most families are left to shoulder the burden of this system. This leads directly to the very low personal savings rates we see today, meaning Chinese citizens save not because they want to, but because they have to. And then there's the healthcare system. While China boasts some of the world's most advanced hospitals in cities like Shanghai and Beijing, access to quality healthcare in rural areas remains very limited. Out-of-pocket expenses for medical treatment are quite significant, especially for chronic or catastrophic health events. The average cost of a hospital stay in China is about $1,100 to $1,300 per visit. That's 70% of the median annual income, which is around $7,000 per year. And remember, half the population earns less than that. This is why personal savings become a critical financial cushion and not a tool for growing personal wealth or future investment. But there's an even bigger challenge. There are very few safe and profitable ways for ordinary Chinese citizens to grow their savings. Unlike in the United States, where 401k plans and stock market investments have turned millions of middle-class workers into profitable investors, the Chinese financial system simply doesn't offer those kinds of opportunities. China's stock market gave near-zero returns in over 18 years, despite a growing GDP. And the most profitable companies remain state-owned, with no path for ordinary people to invest directly in them. This lack of financial freedom for most Chinese creates a vicious cycle in which people save but have no good way to invest those savings. They fall back into holding more cash or pouring it into real estate, which in turn inflates the property bubble even further. But with confidence in property markets collapsing after the Evergrande crisis, many Chinese families now feel trapped more than ever before. So if they won't spend their money and can't invest, where is all the money being made in the country going? You're about to discover another dark side of China. While China's skyline reaches ever higher and infrastructure projects come to dominate government reports, a quieter and more troubling story unfolds beneath the surface. The average Chinese citizen is systematically being excluded from the country's growing wealth. When you think it through, this isn't just a matter of chance, but a product of how China's economy is structurally designed to benefit state-owned enterprises.